I'm really excited to be here and talk about Pathways with you. And this presentation is titled The Pathways Learning Experience. Pathways is the revitalized education program that many of you may have heard was coming. It's here. And the most urgent question people ask is, when will I see it? And you'll see it in September when Region 2 reaches 70% of the clubs receiving the Pathways Learning Experience presentation from a Pathways guide. They will turn it on. That means new members, so we have some guests who are prospective members, will step out and their learning experience will be through the Pathways Learning program. They will begin in Pathways, and the things that I'm telling you about is what they will experience. But it will affect every one of you because change represents potential loss and uncertainty. And the first thing I want to tell you is you're not going to lose the club meeting experience. It's going to be every bit as good as it has been, and it's going to have all those elements that you're used to seeing. So for our guests and our new members, this is not a normal meeting. Our normal meeting has a lot of pieces and parts that help us to build our communication and leadership skills in a warm, supportive environment, to develop ourselves and to have fun. Because if the Toastmasters experience isn't fun, then it's not the Toastmasters experience. Public speaking, of course, is something that everyone almost universally fears, unless you're a sociopath, I think. And then you have no fears, at least in that regard. So I'm here to introduce you to Pathways and tell you what Pathways is about, and to answer your questions and take the questions that you have that I can't answer back up to the world headquarters and get answers for you. So there's a lot of content that's on Toastmasters.org about Pathways, including that all-important first icebreaker project. But when it's turned on in September, when Region 2 reaches 70% of clubs who've been reached by a Pathways guide, then you'll see the full Pathways capability there, and it will be available. And so your question is, what does this mean to me as a member? Because this is not a briefing for the club. It's a briefing for each and every one of you as a member of Toastmasters. And this is, as I said, a very exciting thing. So, pop quiz, and Carl can't answer because he was back there at the inception of Toastmasters, advising Ralph Smedley. But who's Ralph Smedley?
Our founder.
The founder of Toastmasters. And what did Ralph Smedley believe? He really thought that communication was the key for people reaching their potential and impacting their communities and becoming effective leaders and having those interpersonal relationships, those work relationships, those activities in the community that were impactful. And he thought that that occurred when people came together and had what we now call the Toastmasters experience. If you have questions throughout this, please ask. So in the 1940s, Ralph Smedley wrote his basic training manual. Sounds very military, doesn't it? But that was the first Toastmasters education program. And that evolved over time into our current education program. That program features a leadership track and a communications track, and people move through a common experience initially. The achievements that they can experience, competent communicator and competent leader, are outlined in these two manuals that you see. And that's where we all begin. And then there are advanced communication, advanced leadership sorts of opportunities where we can build those things you're familiar with like advanced leader bronze, advanced communicator bronze, advanced communicator silver, and of course I think we have a couple of distinguished Toastmasters here, which is that endpoint of that particular education and leadership journey. Although it's really where you just start to be able to be impactful on your clubs, your areas, your division, your district, and to really put to use all those things that you've got. The good news is, while almost all of those things change, that pinnacle of achievement in Toastmasters and Distinguished Toastmasters will still be there. If you ask me what it takes to do that right now, I cannot tell you. Most of the program has been outlined, and we're certainly ready to get started with materials and other things that I'll talk about, but they're still refining those full requirements for Distinguished Toastmasters. But you're going to see most of that journey here as I talk about it. The revitalized education program, what is now called Pathways, is the biggest change to the education program since Ralph Smedley first wrote basic training, and that was evolved into our current education program. Any questions? And how do we learn?
We're having fun.
As Ralph Smedley said, in moments of enjoyment.
I thought it was moments of torture.
The relief that you when the torture ends.
Right.
For those of you
some-
who are the glass house full type, or the masochistic type, who says, yeah, please, sir, may I have another? But still, it's those moments of enjoyment. So, in 2010, the Board of Directors directed the World Headquarters to revitalize the education program, to refine the leadership content of the program and maintain the communication portion of the program, and to put it together in a way that provided high value to the membership and retain the essence of the Toastmasters experience. And this was the guidance they got. High value, fun, customized to the individual's needs, flexible, competency-based, resource-rich, and ultimately meaningful and effective evaluations. So there were areas like evaluations they looked at, and they said, in some clubs, evaluations are cupcake. It's all frosting and sweetness and light, and an individual doesn't necessarily get things that he or she might use to improve themselves from an evaluation. We need to give more guidance, so that's better. In other clubs, evaluations aren't the peer evaluations they're supposed to be in Toastmasters, the opinion of an individual who's trying to help another individual, those types of things, but they're critiques. And you know what Robert Heinlein said about a critic? They're about as useless as a dead yeast in the bottom of a beer. So Toastmasters International has pumped up the evaluation portion of the program, and also the mentorship portion of the program, which goes hand in hand with that. I'll talk more about that. The important part of Pathways and why they named it Pathways is, as I said before, we all started out with that common core of experiences, working through 10 speeches, which built our communication skills incrementally, working through a series of projects in our Competent Leader Manual. Now we have 10 separate paths, and you get to choose which paths that you want to follow to reach your individual goals. So they're tailored, they're self-paced, they're self-selected, there's flexibility for you to choose what you want to emphasize. So think about some of the things where you do have choice in the current program. The advanced communication manuals. So how many people here have done speeches out of storytelling manual? Or speeches to management? So, or special occasion speeches. So you could choose among those manuals things that you were interested in. That's now baked into the various paths, so that you choose a path that resonates with your self-development goals. Greater access to materials, and especially materials online. Now I told you I'm going to allay many of your fears about loss. If you want the professional printed manuals, they are still available. at a cost. If you want to work from those manuals and not go online, that's your choice. And you can do that, and your club will support you, and Toastmasters will support you. But if you choose to go online, you're going to have a greatly expanded set of resources to help you. If you go online after this meeting and you look at the Icebreaker project, at the videos and the other information that's available there, that'll give you a sense for how that works. Also, there's the ability online for you to collect together evaluations and other input on what you're doing. So you get more potential capability depending on how you want to use it that's available online. And finally, real-world applicability. The program strives to connect what you're doing in the education program to the applications that you would have for it in real life. I feel like I need a testimonial here. Monique, has Toastmasters helped you in your work life?
Yes, it has.
How?
I could not do my job as effectively now if I hadn't started Toastmasters when I did 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Did you know that when you started?
I started because I was promoted into this position as a director and knew I would have to do public speaking.
Okay.
It's the only thing that brought me here every day, and the successes that I've achieved have kept me here.
Great.
It's been life-changing.
Anybody else? Kyle?
I began because I wrote a book. The terror of having to get up on stage and present my findings and research was beyond my scope. Now I am a paid professional speaker thanks to Toastmasters.
I can't believe that, Kyle. You're a gregarious, outgoing person.
I faked it.
You faked it. But
I'm a woman.
Toastmasters gave you tools then.
Gave me tools.
Tools so that you didn't
And
have.
support.
That you
So
didn't-
that's something for those that, where I should have said it, but Jack did. The comfort and support that this club gives is a hand-holding for those of us who are scared to death to utter those first words of what we call the icebreaker. You are supported and mentored by somebody in this club all the way.
And we hope, we believe, I'm confident that those same elements will be there in the Pathways Learning Experience and Education program, and in particular that real-world applicability. So, that was space for me to say more things, which I don't have to say. So, the new learning experience and the old learning experience built 5 competencies at the highest level. And how do we know this? Because the team that put together Pathways studied the the current learning experience and the tools that were provided with that. And they looked out across other resources. And they saw public speaking, interpersonal communication, strategic leadership, management, and confidence. And they identified those as the 5 core competencies that Toastmasters should support and that any new education program should support. They realized that the first 4 are things that we can teach people and can be learned. But the 5th one, that confidence, is something that people obtain through experience. And that may be the real secret of a Toastmasters meeting. You have small experiences, bigger experiences when you give a speech or an evaluation, and all those little experiences add up to increased confidence. You almost don't notice how it affects your confidence until it dawns on you that it does. Tatiana, has Toastmasters helped you with your confidence?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, several years ago, I was offered an opportunity to teach something which is not in the list of my duties, official duties at work. And it's not due to Toastmasters, it's due to my education. I got this opportunity, but I would never have said yes if I haven't got this confidence here. Thanks to all of you.
Excellent. So I told you there are 10 paths in Pathways. These are the 10 paths. After this meeting, if you have questions about any path, I can point you to information about each of these. A new person gets started online by taking an assessment, and through that assessment and the preferences that the individual puts forth, 3 paths are recommended to you. You can select from among those, or you can select other paths. So we see things like dynamic leadership, effective coaching, innovative planning, etc. With each of these, you'll notice that the core competencies are emphasized, and different ones are emphasized in different paths. So taken together, multiple paths would add up to all 5 competencies, but if you're really focused on being a motivational, strategic thinker, planner within your organization, then you'll focus on the competencies of public speaking and interpersonal communication. And you'll also build some confidence in the process. And your third will be the strategic leadership part of the core competency. So there's a mapping from the core competencies into the various paths. And it's just a level of emphasis. So if you say 1, 2, 3 there like you do with the motivational strategies, that's because that's the emphasis of that path. The other core competencies are there. And all the projects, for the most part, include public speaking. We are, after all, an organization that's about speaking and leadership. And so those are there. Any questions, sir? Yeah.
Why,
Go ahead, sir.
go ahead.
No,
Okay, why is the 5 confidence and lighter than all the others?
This is light. This is lighter because we try to teach these directly. We don't try to teach confidence. We might give people coping skills and other sorts of things. But as they developed the Pathways Learning Experience and the new education program, they felt like we can build projects that focus on this, but confidence is a byproduct of doing things, of the other skills that you obtain in the other core competencies, the sub-competencies and sub-skills and other things like that, and added together because you know what you're doing, you'll feel more confident about doing it because you practice doing it in a safe, supportive, nurturing environment among people who become acquaintances and friends, that you'll have that confidence ultimately. So we build confidence, but it isn't the kind of program that folks, I'm going to give Kyle confidence by teaching her about how to be confident. I can tell her how to look confident. I can tell her how to do some things that might mitigate some of the things that she's feeling that takes away from her confidence. I might talk about how she should say things that sound more confident. You know, don't use those weasel words. Be more decisive in what you say. It's okay if you are a little stronger in your statement. And you can talk later about the caveats and the special situations. But that's not going to directly teach her confidence until she goes and does something.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Would you say that presentation mastery is the one which is closest to communication manual we have right now, or they all will be like very different from what you are used to?
I wouldn't say they're very different. I think you'll see a lot of the things that you saw before, but they're packaged differently. And the order might be somewhat different. Because as I'm going to talk about next, there are 5 levels within the education program. Each level builds on the prior level. And of course, every Toastmasters experience starts with what?
The icebreaker.
Icebreaker.
The first speech, right? The icebreaker. That's where you really start. You might do a role, you might come to meetings, and you might do that for 6 months. We've had people come here for a year before they stepped up to give an icebreaker speech. And that's okay, because this is all about you, and all about what you want, and all about you being comfortable with how you're developing yourself. If you needed to be here for 6 months before you're willing to step up, then do it. And if you walk in the door like, oh, Kate Fossen, and you're ready on day 1, Caitlin, to walk up, and you're ready to compete in Toastmasters contests after 1 or 2 speeches, that's good. You will still be able to develop yourself, learn, and to go to those next levels. You know, take Patty. Patty was a pretty good speaker, right? Is Patty a much better speaker now that he's finished his 10 speeches as a competent communicator? Patty will tell you that's true. So where you start isn't as important as where you want to go and how you're going to get there. So these are examples of the types of projects at each of those 5 levels I talked about. And if you want to talk about those marks of achievement, like advanced communicator or silver, those now equate to level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5. Completing level 5 is what you do to become a distinguished Toastmaster. Now, someone may be working on multiple paths. So Kyle might be a level 2 in one path and a level 3 in another. And her ultimate achievement so far is level 3. And that's okay too. Someone might still be working in our current program to achieve goals. Maybe they think they can make distinguished Toastmasters there like Annette. But they can also start down a path that they're interested in and gain mastery over material and use a new program to do material simultaneously. And that's all accommodated for in how Toastmasters International has developed this program. So you see at level 1, you do an icebreaker. You learn about evaluation and feedback. You learn about researching and presenting, those types of projects that are at level 1. At level 2, and one of the things that does occur at level 2 is there's an introduction to mentoring. And there is a mentoring badge that you can achieve, and you can become a Toastmasters mentor. And so clubs will want to build Toastmasters mentors within their club to help to improve that mentorship program. In all, we have the content for 59 projects available through Pathways. More content will be built. The English portion is there. It's not complete because they'll build more content after they've rolled out Pathways and taken the lessons from rolling out Pathways. But they've targeted 8 languages, and they're building out complete content for those 8 languages. And you can see examples of some of those projects. And I would urge you to go online, look at the Icebreaker project to get a feel for how the resources support the project. So 59 projects today, and they're all available. I mentioned badges and awards. At the top, level 1 through 4, and then level 5, the Distinguished Toastmaster badge. These are the things that you can earn as you work your way through the path. And then various other badges that you can give to each other as feedback. So if Carrie makes a breakthrough and she's doing, she's done something wonderful, you can go online and say, Carrie, I want to give you this badge for doing this. Has anyone experienced online types of education systems, especially those built for K through 12? A lot of time they track how much effort you put in, and they give you badges for achievements. And for example, I work and coach on Khan Academy to teach math for K through 12 students primarily. And I have achieved mastery in adding double-digit numbers. So I have went through the videos and looked at them, learned the techniques, applied them, and showed I can add 2-digit numbers consistently and get it correct. And so I've achieved that. There's some other things in calculus and other things, but the single-digit, double-digit number thing. Woo!
That's wrong with that one.
And of course, you'll still get certificates and other sorts of things as we do today. Evaluations. There's more structure to the evaluations. And one of the burning questions people have is, if all this is online, how do we do the evaluation in the club meeting? And the answer is, how do you want to do the evaluation in the club meeting? Because you might want to print out the evaluation, bring it to the club, and hand it to your evaluator. Very similar to handing your book to an evaluator today. You might want to send the evaluator that as a PDF file. And the evaluator can actually fill it out in the PDF or print it for him or herself and fill it out. If it's filled out, you can take a photo of it or scan it and attach it back to your area in Pathways. So there's ways to get the evaluations into the system, even if you're not one of those people who sits on your phone and does an evaluation, or brings in your tablet and does an evaluation on the tablet live in the meeting.
You just still have the oral evaluations at the meeting, right?
And most importantly, that experience of receiving and giving oral evaluations is still there and hasn't changed. But now you have a little more tools and guidance to help you through that. So there are 3 pages, essentially, that are associated with evaluation. The first page is very similar to what you see when you open up a project in one of your manuals in Toastmasters today. Who's doing it? Who's evaluating it? When did it occur? And then purpose and notes about things to look for so that the evaluator has his or her head in the game about evaluating that particular project. So nothing too magical there. The next 2 pages go together. Essentially what you're asked to do is to score the individual as the evaluator, or to receive the score from your evaluator for specific things. So for instance here, vocal variety. In vocal variety, Tatiana might get scored a 5 because she hits all of the elements of vocal variety in that particular project, that speech. Jack might get a 2 because he tried to use some of the vocal variety elements, but he may have missed the mark somewhat. And now Jack knows he should work on that. And Tatiana knows that that's a strength of hers that she can share with others. So she might help Jack to figure out what he's doing wrong in vocal variety. Now I know you're going to ask, how am I, as a relatively new Toastmaster, is going to know what the difference between a 2 and a 5 is in vocal variety? And that's what page 3 is for. Just like the evaluation, the judges' forms that you see for the contest, they have done what in social science is called anchoring. They've anchored each of those scores with a specific description of the sort of things that you should see, hear, experience to be at a level 5 versus a level 2. So Tatiana uses the tools of tone, speech, and volume expertly. Jack uses tone, speed, and volume, but requires further practice. So that's how the page 3 helps you with the evaluation on page 2. It helps all of us get on common ground for evaluations, creates a standard for evaluation that's a little better, perhaps, than the old standard. And by experiencing this with project after project, and it being similar for every project, you'll get more consistency. Any questions about evaluations? Carrie?
So with each project, the first page might have specific differences, objectives, right?
Information about that project.
And the second 2 pages are the same for,
No.
so the second 2 pages are
The
also.
second 2 pages are appropriate for that project.
Good, okay.
So there will be common elements you'll see again and again. You might see vocal variety at level 1, 2, 3, 4,
Right.
5. But you might, you're looking for something, you may be looking for something a little different. You may be looking for exactly the same thing because practice
Right.
is what gets us in the habit of doing things consistently at the level that we should be able to do them.
Thank you.
And you know about as much as I do in truth. So truth in advertising, I haven't seen a level 4 project yet. When they unlock it in September, I'm anxious to do so. Tatiana.
Is uploading the evaluation the requirement to get credit for the project?
The requirement to get credit is that your vice president of education or your president or your secretary goes into Pathways and certifies that you've completed all the projects associated with that level. Clearly, the evaluation should be there. Or if I'm doing it as your VPE, I'm going to want to know that you did the project in the club or in another club, and you got an oral and a written evaluation for that project. And if there are any other requirements for that project, you did it. But the total set of projects that are associated with that path and that level is what your VPE, president, or secretary are looking for. Of course, the VP is the primary. The president and secretary, by virtue of being club officers in the Toastmasters.org, also have access to do that. The VP doesn't or can't.
So is it up to us to put the evaluation form on our individual pages?
I believe that will be so.
Okay.
I know that there is some limited capability that those 3 officers will have to see your individual profile. And there's a limited capability that other members of the club have to see some things so that they can give you those badges and other feedback and those types of things. But because I have not seen the pathways in its rolled out form, I can't tell you with certainty how much there is there. There is some, I've been told that there's some element of that there that allows for other people to see some but not all of your resources. So it wouldn't be reasonable that I as a member can look at your evaluations.
Mm-hmm.
So that I'm probably not able to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Our path that we're currently on, we continue with that? Or it's changed because we're now on pathways? And what happens?
So you're not on a path right now. You're in.
Well, we are in a path of life. So,
You're in the
so looking at the path of life.
Metaphorically, you're on a path.
Exactly.
From a pathways perspective, you're not on a path.
Don't put me off my path. But I'm on my journey,
Yes.
changing lexicon, I'm on my personal journey through Toastmasters. And I haven't finished my next manual. So is Pathways going to usurp that?
No. That current education program stands here. It stands available to you for 2 years after the last region rolls out. So at least into the early 2020s. That's available for anyone who joined Pathways, who joined Toastmasters and got started before Pathways came along. For everybody who joins after Pathways is rolled out, they must start and work through Pathways. For those people who are over here, they can sample Pathways, they can drop what they're doing here and move to Pathways. That's your choice. So if someone told me, you know, I'm an advanced communicator silver, an advanced leader bronze, I need to do my high performance leadership project, I need to mentor a club, I need to be a district officer, I need to do these things to get to Toastmasters, can I get any credit over here in Pathways for those things? The answer is no. But you can stay over here, do those exact same things out of the exact manuals that exist today, and become that distinguished Toastmaster. If someone tells me, I've given 5 speeches, I'm halfway to competent communicator, what should I do? Do you want to be a competent communicator? Do 5 more speeches and get there. Do you want to restart in Pathways? Restart. Give that icebreaker speech again. Do your projects at level 1, 2, etc. Or do both. You, the member, gets to decide. The only iron rules are, there's one system here, there's another system there. Here is Pathways, here's the current education system. You cannot cross streams and move things from one to the other. You can, if you started over here in what will become the legacy system, continue that legacy system until it's retired after the last region is rolled out, has been given 2 years for people to work that program. Yeah, so it's in the future. For those of you who have an investment in Toastmasters so far, and you desire those accolades and those experiences and that development that comes with continuing, you should continue.
Can speeches in the legacy pathway also count for, no, they're completely different speeches.
These are completely different programs. And no, you can't get dual credit. You can choose to get credit here, 1 meeting, come back 2 meetings later and get credit over here for doing the same speech over again.
I wouldn't pay
But you're being evaluated by the criteria that's appropriate for that speech. Tatiana?
Did you mention that everybody who joins in September will have to start on Pathways, or they're still waiting for the final date?
They will roll out Pathways for District 101 when Region 2 reaches 70% of clubs briefed by a Pathways guide on the Pathways learning experience.
And they're only halfway there right now, so it's.
Yeah, they're only halfway there right now, but They expect to get there by early to mid-September.
Today is September, just.
I know. I'm just
Just
telling you,
saying.
just telling you what they expect.
Expectations.
They tend to be very firm on trying to fulfill their expectations.
Okay.
And so they're putting pressure on districts and guides to get the numbers up to 70%. Personally, I'm anxious to see us hit 70%, have the rollout and see what's there. Carrie?
So if, over here, Pathways, that one.
You're standing over here, you're in the new program, congratulations, you're at Pathways.
Okay, yeah, let's say I just jump ship, I'm going over. How do you become a distinguished Toastmaster?
You work your way through level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and I can't tell you what the total requirements are.
Right.
Some people have told me that you're gonna have to go through 2 paths. I don't know if that's true or not.
But you still have that, I mean, you still can say like, I want to be a distinguished Toastmaster, I'll come over here and do it.
The ultimate
But if you're
achievement is,
closer over here, you might want to stay on that.
yeah, it depends on your personal
Okay.
values, preferences, timeline, other things like that.
Okay.
What do you want?
Yeah.
And what do you want to get? You know, I tell people who come into Toastmasters, you can get out of this what you put into it and what you want to get out of it if you put the right things into it.
Right.
Like most things in life, you can sort of skate along and do very little and get very little out of it, and you might enjoy that, and that's okay for you. But you can make of this what you want to make of this. The resources and the other capabilities are there. And most importantly, I want to tell the members and the club that the essence of Toastmasters and the Toastmasters experience will still be there when the current education program is history, just like the basic training manual is history. And we are all moving on paths through Pathways. So the mentor program. I mentioned that at level 2, everybody takes a project on learning about what mentorship is. And there's an opportunity to achieve through the program the designation as a Toastmasters Pathways mentor. It's a rededication to mentorship, to distinguishing between mentorship and coaching, and just doing this better so that we enrich the experience. Because for me, my mentor was Arnie Buss. I knew Arnie from the time when he was my professor and was teaching me about simulation over 20 years ago. And next time I talk about this, it'll probably be over 25 years ago. But when I had questions, I went to Arnie and I asked questions, and he gave me advice, and sometimes I even listened to his advice. But the future Arnie that you're going to have is going to be a better mentor because he's going to benefit from the Toastmasters education program and that portion that focuses on membership, on mentorship. So there are projects associated with mentorship. Everybody gets an introduction at level 2. And here's the mentorship badge, which many of you in our club I know will set out to achieve as rapidly and as effectively as possible so that you can be a better mentor and so that we can revitalize and strengthen our mentorship program. So how do you get started in Pathways? And the first thing I'm going to tell you is go, log on to Toastmasters.org, update your profile, make sure your email address is correct, make sure that you can access the resources that are there. Because as a new member, as soon as they've paid their dues and Arnie and the VP membership get them in the system, that's when they're going to get an email that says, welcome to Toastmasters, go log on and get started. If you haven't logged on in eons, if you don't know how to log on, we can help you get your membership number and the information you'll need to reset your profile there and get on it. But if you're a current member in good standing, Toastmasters International has information about you in the cloud somewhere, and you should have access to Toastmasters.org.
So I logged on this morning to take a look and see what information I could find, and this is all I could find.
Okay,
And
so,
This page.
and this is why it's going to help you. You can go to education, and there's a Pathways Learning Experience, and you click on that, It'll tell you Pathways hasn't rolled out in your district.
Yes, that's what happened.
But down below, there's a whole set of videos and other resources that you can access. And I will show anybody that wants to see after the presentation here that online, because I'm logged in. But yeah, it all starts with logging in and getting to the Pathways education program. And it looks like this. The Navigator is a manual that helps you navigate the site. There's a tutorial for that Vice President of Education, President, and Secretary who have to do some additional things in there. It's meant to be intuitive.
This is not available to us yet though, right?
No, this is available. This
Okay,
is
I
available.
couldn't find this.
Yeah, well, some of this is available. Navigator's available. Choose Your Path's not available because the district hasn't rolled out, for instance. But there are other resources available, like so I can show you those. Navigator is your guide to Pathways. It's a PDF file that you can download, you can print, you can become intimately familiar with it. As I said, you have an online or a print option if you're in Pathways. You know, our Talk the Line Club doesn't have computer access. They'll work out of manuals, but they'll get the full experience. They just won't get the enrichment of the additional resources.
Jack, I have a question about that specifically.
Yes.
Can you do both? Can you say, yes, I want the online experience, but I want to pay extra and have printed
Absolutely.
materials?
Absolutely. Toastmasters International would love for all of you to buy manuals. Out of the 4,000 plus people who have signed up and are working in Pathways now, I think the number was like 9 who've selected to do it in the printed world versus the online world. So you'd be in a distinct minority. Yes.
In the previous slide, there was 2 options. The base camp, which I believe is online experience.
Yes.
Right? And it says $20. Does it mean that, from what I heard, that for all of us who are already Toastmasters, when it starts, these pathways, this will be free for us. Is it true?
No. If you want the printed manuals, there's a cost.
No, not
If you-
printed, the
If you want to be
online.
online, no, there's, your club dues are paying for you to have access, and you can start out with Path and other things like that. There's not an additional cost that's associated for a current member with that. Any new member is still going to pay that $20 new member fee. Now, instead of receiving Competent Communicator, Competent Leader manuals along with that, they will be enrolled into the database and other sorts of things. If they say, I want printed materials, they pay another $20 to get the first manual associated with their particular path. So the first thing you do is an assessment. It helps you.
Question here.
Yes.
Well, I had a comment, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand for current members, when Region 2 reaches 70% and TMI is ready to roll out, all of us that are current members will get an email saying that this is the case and tell us what we need to know to get started.
Yes, my understanding is that when it's activated, because and this is why they ask you, get your email correct in your profile now and know that you can log on. So that email is going to tell you to go log on. It's going to give you information about what you can do.
And it will also explain whatever costs you may have.
Whatever costs are associated with the options you choose. Yes,
So
ma'am.
right now, it looks like 54 to join plus the $20.
Yeah, the 54 plus 20 to join for a new member. If you were joining a club and you were already a Toastmaster in good standing, you would pay that $20 again.
Oh, okay.
The way people thought about the $20 in the past is it pays for the CC and the CL manual. Now you have to think about that $20 as your initiation charge for
We're paying for electrons.
electrons. So you take an assessment and ask questions like this. So select topics you're interested in learning. And you go through a series of questions, and it leads you to... Of course, we all say, I feel relaxed while giving a speech, right? I've seen speakers almost fall asleep up here behind the lectern. Arnie? And they'll give you recommendations based on your preferences and your comfort level and other sorts of things. You can choose that path, or you can choose to explore all of the other paths. You don't have to follow the recommendations. But that's how a new member starting out in Pathways will get started. and the way an old member starting out Pathways can get started.
This is exciting. So much to do.
So, one of the things that Pathways does not change is the Distinguished Club Program, the club meeting, the Toastmaster experience. So for example, the intent was to enhance aspects of the club meeting as opposed to change them. So, our meeting agenda, our standard agenda, the roles like timer and awe counter, and all those things are all still there. They're just worked into the Pathways learning experience in a slightly different way than we currently experience them with the current program. But the intent is to enhance evaluations, for instance, to get more club member support, to receive more recognition, to learn 68 competencies plus. There's 105 competencies that are associated with Pathways versus the 68 that are in the current learning program.
How do we get to 300 then? 68 plus 100.
No, there's a couple hundred, there's just 300 total. There's a couple hundred new ones. There's over 200 new ones, I should say.
And you passed the double digit adding, right?
But this is triple digit, so that's another competency.
For the Distinguished Club Program, the way they accommodate Pathways is to give credit in the education areas for level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you'll have some people achieve Advanced Communicator Silver and somebody else achieves level 4. Those are 2 people who count for your advanced education goals. So the Distinguished Club Program remains intact. See, I told you, you're not losing, you're gaining. That change should not be feared because we've thought about the loss and we've mitigated the loss so that you don't lose in this deal. Toastmasters International wants you to be comfortable with this transition. There are new things you're going to have to learn, and what you have lost is that encyclopedic knowledge that Arnie has about the Toastmasters program. So you can ask him a trivial question and he'll tell you, oh yeah, the successful club program speaking topics give you credit for advanced communicator this. I don't know that. I'm not encyclopedic. But Arnie loses that, but almost everybody else here gains a wealth. And since they don't carry that trivia in their head, they lose very little.
Take one for the team.
So who's here to support you? Dave Spence and Francois Mueller at the district headquarters are invested in this, and Francois is very active. We have a chief ambassador, Bina, and we do not have District 101 ambassadors. And the truth is, we weren't being told enough about Pathways to send them out in the clubs and have them say anything meaningful. So it'd be sort of like me coming up here and saying, I want to talk to you about Pathways today, and Pathways is coming, Pathways is coming, Pathways is coming. And you say, what's Pathways? When is Pathways coming? What does this mean to me? And as a club ambassador, I would say, heck if I know. But I've got a canned presentation that's nearly contentless that says Pathways is going to be a great thing. Well, now I have enough information as a Pathways guide to tell you Pathways is going to be a great thing. And I can say that with some confidence. And when I see it roll out and I experience it myself, I help others, and I help the 8 clubs that I have to make this transition, then I'll say with certainty that Pathways is a high-value program that's going to be a great thing for us as Toastmasters, for our clubs, and for the entire universe of Toastmasters out there. So I'm your guide. I'm here to help you. I don't have all the answers, but I have access to world headquarters to ask questions. What do you want to know?
What's your role as a guide beyond this, throughout this process?
So the Pathways Guide contacts the assigned clubs and sets up a meeting to present the Pathways learning experience. The Pathways Guide then supports the Vice President of Education of that club and the club officers by holding 15 virtual support sessions to answer questions and deal with issues that arise as they roll out Pathways in their club. And I also provide to each of those clubs this nifty little Pathways kit.
Nifty, everybody.
Included in that kit is this getting started guide that each of you now own, along with some other materials, some of which are also available online to those people. So that's your Pathways kit. This presentation is on the little USB if your BPE needs it, those sorts of things. I'm not going to go through other helpful tips and things other than to say, get online and try out the things that are there now. There are videos and other information and testimonials and that sort of stuff. There's that first Icebreaker project.
Yes, Icebreaker is there. You can actually go and see what it
So you
looks
go and
like.
see that, and that's very helpful to get a feel for what a project looks like. Again, Tatiana.
Have you had a chance, or maybe you know about somebody who had this chance to attend a meeting in a club who already is in the Pathways?
We've had folks who come on to the webinars that Toastmasters International experience who are in clubs that are using Pathways, and they field questions and talk about it. Your meeting experience is largely unchanged though. Your agenda structure is the same. And we just got word that EasySpeak, for instance, the software we use, is going to begin to incorporate the Pathways projects in so that we will be able to continue to use EasySpeak if we choose to do so, because I had hoped, but it didn't occur, that Toastmasters International actually provided us with something that integrated the fact that they're tracking the projects you're doing, the roles you've had, the speeches you've given, with the agendizing of the meeting, but they did not.
As far as who's in Pathways now, it's really in the very early stages. They did a couple of preliminary assignments of specific clubs, and they're trying to work the bugs out as they go. But District 57 is the only district right now, and that's experimental too, because District 57 is actually part of our region. And District 57 goes from Fremont, California, north through the East Bay, and then everything north of San Francisco and Northern California. That's District 57, as opposed to us. We're in District 101. We used to be part of District 4, which was San Francisco, south to us, and now 101 is Palo Alto, south to us. However, Region 2 is the first entire region that will go to Pathways. And again, as Jack mentioned, the goal is September, but I've seen the statistics of how far they've gotten, and I think 38% of the clubs have been formally briefed like Jack did today at this point. District 49 is way ahead of everybody else. They've almost got their 70%. Our district's down at about 11%, most of which I think are Jack's. So anyway, my guess is we're not going to make September, but we might. It's moving a lot faster than it was.
It'll move a lot faster because the number scheduled is nearly 70%. It's closer to 70% than the number who've actually executed. But it's a challenge. I had clubs that say, we can't do anything for you until October. Because we just met with our club and put out the agendas for the next 8 meetings. We have the Walk the Line Club that's on lockdown right now. So we can't get in to talk to them. We have clubs like the Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey, who's just coming back from their summer break, and they start their club back up. And they're recruiting new members. That's their priority, because every September is their one opportunity to fill their club with new members. Returning, maybe a third of their club returns, a quarter of their club returns each year. And so we have to accommodate that. And so I will still be giving Pathways Guide presentations in October. But I suspect that the program will have been rolled out. So I logged into Toastmasters.org, I went to Education, I went to the Pathways Learning Experience. So you see this, and you can click on here with when can I start. It'll tell you your region hasn't rolled out and the date isn't set. So don't do that. Instead, go down here and read the information that's here. You know, you might click on a podcast or other things that are here. You might go to what are the features of Pathways, which really just pops you down to the same place. What's the history of Pathways? What's a rollout schedule, which is distinctly unuseful unless you want to look for something about somebody who's already rolled out. But there's essentially what Carl said about that. But most importantly, you're going to want to look at sample your first project. You're going to want to know how to break the ice. And if I'm lucky, things will come up. And here's where you start to see that richer set of resources. You know, so if you want to begin, etc., you can go through here. One of the things that they'll do is they'll teach you about navigation as soon as you've been on there. Even if you've been on there 5 times right now, you still get offered an opportunity to learn about how to navigate the site and those types of things. So this is a place to go if you want to get started learning something about it, and you receive that email that says Pathways is rolled out. This is where you'll go to begin a Pathways learning experience. And even if you're just a club member and you're working through the current program, you're going to need to know enough about this to do the things that we do to help each other as members of a club. You know, the officers are going to learn how to do the things that officers have to do. If you evaluate someone, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to handle that evaluation. You know, if you're looking at roles that someone's taking in the meeting and trying to make sure that they match up with their education goals, that's a lot more critical now. So this is where you go for help. Any questions?
I know you said about logging into the organization, but it's my Speakeasy?
No, Speakeasy is totally separate from Toastmasters.org.
So I have to create,
If you have probably an account at Toastmasters.org, you probably don't know the password if you don't go there.
mhm.
You know, if you've been Kyle and you were a VPE, you went there a lot last year. Because that's how she put in the Education and Leadership Awards for members of the club.
It's like Amazon.com, you just set up a
Create,
username and password.
okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it's no big
I
deal.
mean, and now as president, she goes there to see what the club's progress is on the Distinguished Club program or other things like that.
I do.
We all get one when we sign up.
You all get one when you sign up, and as I said, if you don't know yours, having your member number will help you recover it.
Yeah, or your email.
Or if you know the email address that you had when you filled out your membership application, because if Arnie mistypes your email, you're lost. And I'm pointing to Arnie because it should be the VPE doing this, but mostly Arnie does it for us because he's such a kind and generous Toastmaster. And he likes handling the money.
And your member number is on the address of the magazine, when it comes in a plastic wrap now,
Right.
the member number should be on your address box.
So I don't want to keep anyone here beyond time, but I'm here as a resource for you as long as you want to talk to me. We can continue the meeting. I can relinquish control to our Toastmaster and president and then be here as a resource for you. Please sign up for roles and speeches for September 1st, September 8th, September 15th. You'll see, September 8th, 15th, and 22nd. You'll see those coming out. If you want to give a speech, request a speech in Easy Speak, or email me and tell me you want to request a certain speech in Easy Speak, and I'll help you do that.
If I might interject, are we applauding? Are we?
Yeah.
We keep passing to.
Madam Toastmaster?
Okay, thank you.